I'm off to a party. In fact, it's a pretty important party because it's Prune's marvelous party that he is giving for Lalan. More of that in a moment. Just have a look at that lovely, beautiful photograph behind me. And thank you, Frankie K. It is just so reminiscent of when I was a 10-year-old sitting on the front veranda, loving that view. And now we've moved to Mashonaland, so it's all the more important. Carol gazed into the distance, following the horizontal dips, troughs, and heights of the line of deep blue hills. The sky lightened, anticipating the moment that the sun would burst above the horizon, as it did so suddenly at this latitude. There was an almost breathless stillness in these early mornings. No movement in the leaves, no clouds, just the white blue of a heating sky against a still sleeping land. The noisy welcome of an African dawn chorus of chirrups, whistles, and birdsong complemented the crystal clear air, thinned by the altitude of almost 5,000 feet above sea level. She heard a sonorous whoo, 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 followed by the quiet double-time answer, whoo, whoo, and she smiled contentedly, trying to spot the distinctive, stately walk of a pair of groundbills. I wish you could hear them in real terms. Lovely ground hornbills as they boom their way across the veldt. But she knew also that they could be up to 3 miles away, such is the carrying distance of that haunting sound. Their shining sable-black feathers, brilliant scarlet necks and faces, and yellow eyes, fringed with those absurdly long eyelashes, were a thrilling sight, as they made frogs or lizards their prey among the tufted grass below. She shut her eyes and drank in the sounds, smelt the dung dust of the bush, and loved the sun on her face as a rush of air brushed her cheek like warm silk, and a sudden gust whipped up a whirligig of twigs and leaves. Her thoughts drifted back to life in Chilorchul, life in Essexvale. She thought of Jabu, wondering where he was now. Their paths diverged when his family went to Tigwani. The last she heard of him was a few years ago when Prune said they'd both been writing JC at Kutama Mission, and she wondered whether he'd been able to persist with his education long enough to write year 12 this year. Bit doubtful, because he was really not interested in school, but he was a natural leader and a promising young hope for the future of what was now the Federation of Rhodesia and Iceland. Carol's and Jabu's fathers had met again 5 years ago, when both were made part of a team elected to help set up the African Affairs Board. They'd met regularly since. But last time Mr. Nkube confided he was anxious about Jabu. His impatience and temper are very short, he'd said in passing. It's just not like him. Angus meant to write and encourage Jabu, but having to deal with more pressing problems pushed back that important follow-up. Prune? Oh, Prune. She smiled involuntarily, thinking of smiley Prune. He'd passed JC with flying colours, of course, all but self-taught. When Lalan was transferred to a school clinic near Essexvale, 20 miles the other side of Bulawayo, she had insisted that Nison came as the clinic orderly. So Prune's parents were still with him. Lalan lived in one house near the clinic, and Nison and his wife and children lived in another. Prune lived in both houses. He wrote to Carol every month, telling her about his job in a store. He said he made sure he was popular with all customers, black and white, asking how they were and trying to remember details about sick children or happy events. Store owner, Mr. Bellini, was training him well, and a few months ago, he made Prune the accountant. He now had to check the stock and oversee bookkeeping and banking. His sister Maura also worked for Mr. Bellini, She and Prune were very good friends, but she wasn't his real sister, of course, because she wasn't adopted. He'd been saving up for months so that he could afford to give Lalan a party for her 70th birthday. It was to say thank you for everything she'd done for him, as well as to celebrate her years of hard work in the clinic, mostly by herself, as there were no doctors in Yamatlorval or in Essexvale. Prune said everyone Lalan had helped loved her, and she deserved the best birthday he could give her. Carol studied a recent photograph enclosed in yesterday's letter. She hardly recognized this tall, slim man in jacket and tie, but still with that distinctive wide grin, or the girl standing beside him, dressed to the nines, in a frock with her cinched waist and large puffy skirt, so fashionable in 1957. Carol's thoughts wandered, remembering how they would spend their pocket money buying lemons and take them back to the hostel to squeeze out the juice. When they had enough, they'd soak their petticoats, then without squeezing the moisture out, rush to hang them on the line, draping them over an umbrella or anything that would keep them well apart. They would dry and stay like that. It was a sticky, messy job, but well worth the effort. But if you wore a lemon petticoat in the rain, you'd end up with very sticky legs. I'm sure many people remember just that. Anyway, moving on. Prune wanted Lalan's party to be a surprise, with all Lalan's friends there. Carol was a bit anxious, because in a rural area like Essexvale, black and white were not yet used to attending parties together. Prune asked Mr. Bellini if he should invite everyone to come, whether they were black or white. The genial shop owner had looked stern for a bit, then nodded gravely, suggesting Prune should send out the invitations and see what happened. He said Prune should not be upset if not everybody accepted the invitation, because some might not be able to, that those who did really wanted to be there. He decided Mr. Bellini was indeed a wise man. So Prune sent out over 50 carefully written invitations, drawing a little flower on the corner of each pink and purple page, emphasizing the need to keep the event a surprise, with instructions that they would have to be at the hall at 6:15 on the dot. He was excited, pleased, and then bothered because everybody accepted. Mr. Bellini might be a wise man, but he was wrong about this. Prune had worked out he had saved enough to cover the costs of up to 80% of those who might accept. Now he was going to be short, but he couldn't borrow money from Lalan this time. In honor of Lalan's birthplace, he had decided to make it a Scottish party. So he and Maura went hunting around a funny little shop in Bulwer, where they'd found the X-shaped white cross on a blue background, the flag of St. Andrew of Scotland. On the way home, they saw thistles along the main road. After many ouches and pain, they picked a basket full of the horrible things, because they were the national emblem of Scotland. Prune couldn't understand why any country would have a thistle as its national flower, but he decided it was something to do with how tough and prickly the Scots could be. Lalan was always brisk and determined in her very Scottish way. She and Nison had coped with epidemics of typhoid and cholera, as well as ongoing leprosy and a virulent strain of cerebral malaria in Chilocho particularly. Things weren't quite so bad in Essexvale, but even so, she was midwife, surgeon, specialist, all rolled into one, patching up or sewing up the wounds of fights and the maulings of wild animals. Tough job. She still sported a broad Scottish accent, and the only time she lost her brusque, no-nonsense personality was when she spoke to Prune so wistfully about Aberdeen. She'd come to southern Rhodesia over 20 years ago, but had never been able to afford to go back and see it again. One day, Prue vowed, he would be rich enough to send her to Aberdeen. He knew the only time that Lalan's personality changed was if anyone dared to say she was Scotch. I am not Scotch. That is a bottle of whisky, not a person. I am a Scot or Scottish. Nobody called her Scotch anymore. As the party drew closer, Prune realised he still needed about £35, even though he'd saved every penny he could. Now he'd have to decide what he couldn't buy. Mr. Bellini saw him looking sad and asked what the problem was. Prune told him. Well, you're just going to have to cut down on all of those drinks, Prune. Prune felt sad, not giving people what he would have liked. He wanted to show he was able to have a good birthday party for Lalan, but also that as a black African, he loved and cared for his white European mother. It was an interesting time, because a few years ago, Southern Rhodesia, Northern Rhodesia, and Nyasaland were brought together and called the Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland. The Federation made black and white people think harder about how they got on with each other. Some did better, some did worse. Prune and Mora made plates of sausage rolls, tomato sandwiches, cheese straws, and chipolatas with tomato sauce in little dipping bowls. They carried them over to the village hall to set everything up. The guests would only have lemonade or water to drink. Mora had said it wouldn't really matter, and he trusted her. Bob, the manager of the village hall, hadn't charged Prune any fee for the hall. He said the whole community needed to honour Lalan. Prune made him swear he wouldn't let Lalan know about the party because Bob talked to everyone about everything all the time, especially on the party line phone. Prune had 18 packs of crepe paper in blue and white, which the store ordered specially for someone else's party, but that was cancelled. So Mr. Bellini said Prune could have it at cost price. They used those as tablecloths and decorations with clumps of thistles in jam jars. He and Mora cut long strips which they twisted together, blue and white, and Bob strung streamers across the room. It all looked very fine. Prune walked over to the big fridge to put the food in until the party started. But it was full of beers and mixers. Oh no, he panicked. The day was very hot and the food had to go into the fridge. Oh, Bob, somebody has put drinks into our fridge. I have to get this food in. Bob smiled. A big Italian man you probably know, Prune, came in and he filled up the fridge, saying it was for Lalan's party. He said this was his present to her. I've got another fridge you can use. Prune's eyes prickled with tears. But Ndebele men don't cry, ever. He turned away quickly so Bob couldn't see, stashed away the feed into the other fridge, and ran to find Mr. Bellini. He was about to throw his arms round the Italian to thank him when he remembered he was his boss and he was white. Young black men didn't do that. But Mr. Bellini smiled and put his arm round Prune, hugging him as he stammered out his thanks. Well, we couldn't have only half a party for Lalan, could we? At breakfast on the day, Prune gave Lalan a pretty card and some flowers. Then he got home from work early and told her to put on her special occasion blue and white dress, because there was an important meeting with a new road going right past the clinic. That part was true, but the meeting was really the next night. Lalan never remembered dates or days, so he knew he was safe. But it was funny that she'd have to wear her blue and white dress 2 days running. His friend, Neil Thane, went to a school in Bulawayo called Northleigh, and he learned to play those weird squealing bagpipes, and Lalan went all soft when she heard them. Neil offered to play Speed Bonnie Boat as they walked up the steps to the front door, which he did. Oh, no, exclaimed Lalan. Listen, Prune, someone is playing the bagpipes. Oh, stop. I must listen. Lalan stood on the steps, eyes shut, gripping Prune's arm tightly. They're playing the Sky Boat song. She spoke in a quiet little voice, then started to sing, Carry the lad that's born to be king. Her voice cracked, and she couldn't carry on. She dropped her head to listen. Prune waited. Come, Lalan, he said quietly. You'll be late. As they opened the big double doors to walk into the darkened hall, the lights went on and everyone shouted, surprise! And Lalan cried, and then she laughed, and then she cried again. Everyone enjoyed the sandwiches and the sausage rolls that Prune and Mora had made, and Mora watched carefully to make sure there was enough, and then signaled Prune with her thumbs up. Mr. Bellini rose to his feet, and there was a sudden buzz of activity as everyone filled their glasses. I was looking around the room just now and feeling how amazing it is that we have 10 different groups of people here tonight. He stopped and pointed out people from each table. English, Greek, Amandebele, Tswana, Akorekore, Afrikaans, German, Chichewa, and of course, the most important of all, Italian and Scottish. Everyone laughed. We all bring our skills to our community, which has developed so well in the last 15 years. We have our new village hall and the wonderful morning markets held here every week by Miss Bell and Mrs. Welby. Then we have a new schools in Zingwane and St. Stephen's, our beautiful little stone church built by the Mngwane boys, new mining up in Bushtik, big farms being developed, and now even I have some competition with a new store to open next to the post office. That'll keep you on your toes, Mario. You'll have to keep your prices down now. Mr. Bellini laughed. Okay. I asked for that. But perhaps we are only now realizing that one of the most precious things that has happened to Essexvale recently has been the new clinic. There is not one person in this room that has not been treated, brought back to life, soothed and loved by our little Scottish nurse, Sister MacLeod, whose 70th birthday we celebrate today. Sister MacLeod was trained at the Royal Infirmary in Aberdeen. She qualified as a theatre sister, but then she chose to help in the development of southern Rhodesia. The one thing she did not know anything about was tropical diseases. There was a murmur of surprise. But that did not bother our little Sister MacLeod. She is now one of the country's tropical disease experts. Everybody clapped and shouted, well done, Lalan! Whatever the problem, we have Sister MacLeod and Nyson to make it better. Lalan, we salute you and we honor you for your hard work, your dedication, and your love for all the people in this town. Most of all, Lalan, thank you for leaving your precious home in Aberdeen to do so. A toast, ladies and gentlemen, to Lalan. May she live among us for many more years to come in good health and happiness. Everyone stood up and said, Lalan! Old Mr. James, who never said anything and always sat hiding in a corner because he didn't like people very much, jumped up, held his glass high and sang, oh, she's a jolly good fellow. And everyone joined in. The party had been better than Prune ever thought it could be. Mr. Bellini turned towards him. Essexvale has been donating towards something very precious for Lalan, Prune. You give it to her, but read the instructions first. Prune stood up as he took a piece of paper and a big cardboard cylinder from Mr. Bellini. Lalan, This comes with love on your 70th birthday from everyone in Essexvale. It is something that you have often talked about, saying how much you would love our wee drum. Well, there are many wee drums in this package, and you will know that every drum is revered for its medicinal malts. Everybody laughed. Prudence glanced at Lalan's face. It is to be kept in a dark place and treated with great respect. Wee drums should last you for the rest of your life. And although it is already 10 years old, it will get better as it gets older. Prune handed over the large cardboard cylinder, beautifully wrapped to match the blue and white theme and look like the flag of Scotland. She opened it and gasped. Oh, no, it's Lafroig, single malt, 10 years old. Tears of happiness poured down her face. Everyone went quiet as she sipped her first wee dram in 20 years and pronounced it the finest in the world. Well, we do have a catch up with Pruden and with Jabu next week. I hope you will join me then.